Are you struggling to conceive? You have options, and at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group, we'll make sure you have the guidance and support you need. PREG is known for individualized fertility care that's unique to every patient. We take the time to provide a reassuring and empowering experience because we believe that you deserve nothing less. Let us help you on your journey to parenthood. Visit us at pregonline.com to learn more. Get the guidance and support you need at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group.
I brought you some cookies. Hashtag homemade, hashtag oatmeal raisin, hashtag show me the cookie.
Sweet. Hashtag don't mind if I don't.
My name is Richard Dix, and this is How Did That Happen? A podcast where I look at everyday things or events and try to figure out how they came to be. Every week I will research one topic, and by the end of the episode, I hope to truly have the answer to the question, how did that happen? All right, welcome back to another episode of How Did That Happen? The hopefully new and improved How Did That Happen? We are trying to make some changes here. This is episode 68. We're going to be covering symbols. We had an episode previously that was called Names and Things, where we kind of just did the names of a bunch of different products. You could almost call this one Symbols and Things, but it's definitely just going to be symbols. We're going to cover things like the @ sign, the hashtag, the peace sign, the ampersand, all that good stuff, tell you where it came from, how did it happen. Like I said, this is the new and improved HDTH. We're going to have a couple differences here that the last 67 episodes have not really had. We're going to have gotten rid of a couple segments and hopefully putting in some new segments to kind of keep it kind of vivacious and kind of always keep you guys on your toes. The roundup, I believe, will be a thing of the past, as well as the things I didn't know before segment that may come back later, but right now I'm not quite finding a place for it in the podcast. It will kind of be replaced, but not quite, by a current event / old event section, which doesn't quite have a name yet or a full focus, but we're just going to throw it in there and see what happens. But always, got a little housekeeping to get through here. What am I watching? I just watched that Waco doc on Netflix. I've seen a number of different documentaries on this stuff before, so I kind of knew what happened. That wasn't new to me, but the interviews they had were top notch. It was pretty good. I really don't know how Netflix does it. They always seem to get people that haven't shown up in previous documentaries about the same thing, and it adds a lot of color commentary to the subject matter. But definitely check it out if you're into that stuff. There was one woman in there that I told my coworker about it when I saw it. I was just like, she still seems like she's in that cult. And she's one of the ladies that went to jail for the cult, and she's just, the way she's talking, it's like, man, like, this has been 30 years. You still sound like you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Like, you still sound like you were going to the meetings. You know what I mean? But definitely good thing to watch. Check it out if you get a chance. What am I listening to? This is what am I listening to / what am I watching? Because this is a cooking podcast show. Who knows what people are doing these days? It's called Something's Burning. It's by the comedian Bert Kreischer, who listened to this podcast. You've heard me talk about him a number of times. He has a bunch of different shows. This is a cooking show that he does where he releases the audio as well as the video. And it's really good. They do a lot of different dishes. He's not a cook, and so that's kind of the fun part is, will the dish look like what it's supposed to at the end? But in the meantime, it's him and his friends he chooses to bring on. They talk and they laugh. They have drinks. It's a good little, just something to watch. I think it comes out on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday on YouTube. But definitely check that out. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about these new changes that are coming to How Did That Happen. If you've already noticed, we are no longer doing 2 episodes a week. And if you've been following for a while, we've been talking about doing that for the last month or so. I think it was finally time to get that done. Finally time to pull that trigger. We're looking at 4 episodes total for the whole month. There'll be 2 regular How Did That Happen topics that happen every month. There'll be once every 2 weeks, basically, is what's going to happen. So now, like right now, this episode will come out right here, and the next Monday will be a bite-sized bio, and the Monday after that will be another How Did That Happen. We'll just kind of keep that going until something different shows up and changes. And I did that, if you're wondering, just because I felt like I wasn't getting enough information out to you guys in a good way, the right way. I felt like I was kind of rushing them. I'm 2 shows a week is a lot to do for somebody sometimes. So I just thought I'd slow it down and make sure that we can keep the integrity of the show intact. And I think we're doing that. The goal was to have guests for the show this week. I don't think that's going to happen this week, but it is definitely coming down the pike. I'm trying to line up some people to get on here, and that's going to be another part that will be different than what the previous show has been. All right, and one of the new changes we have coming up is right now, what I'm going to do, and like I said a little bit earlier, I don't quite know how this is going to work, but I like the idea. And so what I've done is I've found a place that archives newspapers for like the last couple hundred years. They scan them in, and you can just it's a search engine, and you can just look for stuff. And so my plan is to try to find a way to week look for quirky little articles, different stuff that people have never heard of or kind of been living in obscurity or has been forgotten for a long time. And I don't quite have it down pat, but what I was able to find today, I'll share this quick story with you guys before we get on to the actual episode, is a tale of an old Kiowa Indian named Blue Dog. Old Blue Dog. You can be the judge of this because I read this article, and the newspaper clipping will be attached to be on the website. Might even put it on the Twitter page. The question is, did this man bring people back to life or not? So this is from an article posted in the Elbert County Tribune of Elbert County, Colorado on January 12, 1912. An old Blue Dog was a Kiowa Indian in the late 18th century. This tale is told from old army soldiers that used to be on the frontier in the late 1870s, give or take. And so old Blue Dog was a medicine man. And like I said, the question is, did he bring people back to life or not? Now, he had been doing his own medicine, his own form of Indian medicine, which is a lot of incense and dancing around his sick people, but none of that was really working. A man by the name of Dr. Burnham was actually brought to Blue Dog and saw what he was doing and ended up actually helping one of his patients, quote unquote, because he knew what was wrong with him before Blue Dog did, and I guess the guy had epilepsy or something like that, and he cured him of it. And so Blue Dog saw that, and later on, Blue Dog came back and got Dr. Burnham again for another one of his guys who had some issues. And, the Indian told him, Blue Dog said, if you tell people what I'm doing, they'll kill me. Basically, if you tell them that I don't really know medicine, I am no use to them. Burnham cures the guy. Later on, fight breaks out, of course, between the Indians and the settlers. That's just the story as old as time. And all the Indians dip out and leave. So does Blue Dog. In this little skerfuffle, if you will, Dr. Burnham's wife gets taken because she was in a stagecoach on the way to them. This is all happening, I believe, in Nebraska, Kansas, I want to say. And Dr. Burnham's wife, she disappears. Gone. Don't see her for a month. Right. And then old Blue Dog comes back about a month later and sets up his teepee back on the grounds where the settlers are living at. Just him, nobody else. And then he comes to Dr. Burnham and says literally, quote, basically, quote, your medicine is strong, my medicine is stronger. Come see what I got. Come see what I can do for you. And he brings him into his tent, his teepee, and he does a little dance, right? Burns some incense. And then these curtains fall. There's his wife. There's Dr. Burnham's wife in the flesh. And that's kind of where they leave it. The story. There's no part 2, season 2, episode 3, nothing that. They're just and I'm just so is that, are we believing this man just brought somebody back from the dead? Or did he steal her away from the Indians? I don't know. So the question is to you, what do you think happened to old Blue Dog? Is he that good at the medicine, or is he just really good at stealing people back from his Indian brethren? Put it in the comments. And that, we're going to try to do more of that as they come down the pike, more just different stories. I read that when I read it in the newspaper, and I was just like, did they just say this man brought somebody back from the dead? They just casually dropped that in there? I'm not sure. We're going to find more weird stories like that to bring to you every 2 weeks when the new HTTH comes out. I don't know if there's much else to get to before we actually start the episode. As always, if you're new here, you can, and even if you're not, you can go over to htthappen.com to find all the extras for the previous episodes and the new episodes that are to come. We are at HTThappen for all the socials, which is still mostly just Twitter and Instagram. Give us 5 stars if you like what you hear here. 2 stars if you didn't want to give us 5 stars. Please tell us why you didn't want to give us 5 stars. Constructive criticism is always welcome. I don't think there's much else to get into, so before I start rambling, without further ado, as we know to do, here is the episode. All right, so first on the list of our symbols today is the @ sign, and that is the A with the kind of the circle that goes around it. You see it a lot. It's definitely in between email addresses and in front of tags and stuff like that. People's names on Instagram and Twitter is what you see these days. Is mostly what people are kind of know it for. But we're gonna get into the kind of overall history, and we'll find that people think it actually went back. That it's been used amongst humanity for probably almost 2,000 years. Maybe 13, 1400 years, 15, depending on who you ask. is what we'll see here. Linguists are divided as to when the symbol first appeared. Some argue that the symbol dates back to the 6th or 7th century when Latin scribes adapted the symbol from the Latin word ad, meaning at, to, or toward. And what we'll find is we'll see that it was the scribes as well as the monks who kind of pioneered this and really engineered this for their own kind of, because you don't think about this a lot maybe you do, I don't know. But back in the day, anything that before like the printing press, or really before the printing press, everything that was made had to be like handmade, and it was like they were making copies. We have printers and stuff now and copiers. People were like, oh, you want a copy of that? Okay, give me a couple of days. And especially in their time, because they had to like chisel it out, like bang it out on rock. And so they were like, they developed signs to kind of skip forward in the process a little bit, save any time you can when you got to just do this so many times. And one of them was, and we'll see this happen actually in a couple of different cultures, they would use the A and then kind of use some sort of loop, maybe half a loop, depending on which culture it was, that the scribes, in an attempt to simplify the amount of pen strokes they were using, created the ligature, the combination of two or more letters, by exaggerating the upstroke of the letter D and curving it over the A. So that's really how we get it. It's crazy to think about it when you look at your Instagram handle next time or something like that and think about, it's been around for 1600 years. I mean, when I learned that, I was like, that's remarkable. I really think it is. Now, the earliest the oldest one that we have in existence right now is only from 1345, and it's a translation. It's a translation of Greek, I think, into Bulgarian, or no? Well, they don't say what it's a translation from, but it does say a translation of Greek, written by Constantinos Manasses in 1345, and it's actually in the Vatican. And I would love to get in the Vatican sometime to see. I mean, they say their archives are just crazy. You know what I mean? I bet they have a lot of good stuff. But yeah, it's in the Vatican, and it features that A, symbol kind of circled around. And actually, to get in the actual name of it, the nomenclature, the at sign can be called a number of different things. It can be called the at sign, the at symbol, commercial at, which I think I've heard that maybe rarely, but and also when I was growing up, I think it was called the address sign. I really do. I feel like that's what my mom called it when she was teaching me, or my dad too. He'd be mad if I don't mention the fact he was there too. That they were teaching me how the internet worked. I feel like they used to call it the address sign. Now, the question really is, how did it go from monks banging it out on rock to being in between, your favorite email and or Instagram handle? That's the question we're trying to answer here. But before we get there, we'll kind of take it through the Middle Ages. That's when we kind of do see the kind of monks get their bid. They do that because, like I said, the scribes were the first ones back in the day. But they kind of do the same thing. Like I said, it's really just it's to get past a little more to do it quicker. It's really in my head I want to call it laziness, but it's not. I can't call these dudes lazy. I've never chiseled anything in my life, so they definitely got one up on me there. But yeah, it's kind of seemed like I said before the printing press, they had to really bang these out by hand. It can also be used as a unit of measurement, or not a unit of measurement, but kind of like a way of, and that's one of the ways we'll see. We'll see that with a number of symbols that we actually talk about here today. And one of the first times that happens is in 1536, when a letter written by Francesco Lapi, he was a Florentine merchant, he used the at symbol to denote units of wine that he called amphorae, which were shipped in large clay jars. Got that clay jar wine out here, and they've it's also like I said, it's like a measurement. And that guy Francesco definitely uses something like that, but it's also been used as something like I don't know what I mean, almost I guess still like a measurement. Like this, the example here is how it kind of happened. It would play a role in commerce, as merchants would use it to signify, I guess, at the rate of. So that's what the at symbol would mean for them, as in like 12 widgets at $1, meaning there's 12 widgets, they all cost $1 a piece, instead of saying you're getting 12 widgets for $1. You know what I mean? So that's without that's how we kind of got to be able to articulate that. The first typewriters that came around in the mid 1800s did not actually have the at symbol. It wasn't a large, wasn't famous or popular enough to show up on there. It really wouldn't show up on keyboards of any kind until like the 70s. 1971, I think, is the first time that we'll see it really kind of come into prominence in that way. And it comes from this guy named Ray Tomlinson. And he was trying to figure out a way to get. He's a programmer. He's a coder, and so he's trying to connect people who have programmed computers with one another, right? But he had to use a symbol that the computer wouldn't see as a piece of code. So he had to use something that was basically kind of obscure, something that wasn't so used, so that, you know, like I said, like, so that the computer wouldn't automatically like pick it up and be like, oh, that's something else, which would mess up the entire sequence. And he ended up going with the @ symbol, because up until that time, the programmer was, you know, the people that were trying to connect, they were typically connected to a particular mainframe machine via a phone connection, and a teletype machine, which was basically a keyboard with a printer in it. You know, but these computers, they weren't connected to one another, so they hired BBN Technologies to kind of try to figure that out. And Tomlinson was one of the guys who worked for that company. And it said that he kind of chose the @ symbol because he saw it on his keyboard, right above the P, the letter P on his Model 33 teletype is what he says. And he's quoted as saying, "I was mostly looking for a symbol that wasn't used much," he told Smithsonian. And he says here, he says, I quote, I was mostly looking for a symbol that wasn't used much, and there weren't a lot of options, an exclamation point or a comma. I could have used an equal sign, but that wouldn't have made much sense, end quote. And so he ended up choosing the @ sign. When he created this kind of phenomenon, if you will, he really kind of created the first email. You know, he really created the email naming system. We're responsible. You know, Ray Tomlinson is responsible for the email naming system. I thought, you know, when you say it like that, I thought it would mean more, but it's still pretty cool. And so there's not much about the @ sign before we're going to jump to the next symbol. The last thing I want to talk about before we get to the next symbol, which is the ampersand, by the way, is just what the @ sign is called in different countries. And you wouldn't think it's people, humanity is very interesting. So let's see, in Bosnia and Croatian, and Serbia and other places like that, it is referred to as the crazy eye. The @ symbol is called the crazy eye. It's pretty, I mean, I kind of get it, but it's such an odd, I don't know. In the Czech Republic, it's called the Zavinak, which means roll mop. So they look at that, or pickled herring. That's what they call it in Czech. That's what, like, if you think, oh, it's just the @ sign. It's not. It's not. It's a lot of things. Okay. In Germany, it's called the Affenschwanz, right? Which means the monkey's tail. So basically, they call it the monkey's tail over there. So you think we kind of have it's pretty tame with us. We just call it the @ sign. They're like, yo, yeah, my name is, J.11 monkey's tail Comcast.net or something like that, you know? In Greece, they call it papaki, which it means little duck. Like, I have a long list of these. I'm not going to get into all of them, but if you want to, if you're looking for something to do on a Friday night, you look up what all the different people in the world call the @ symbol. And I'm telling you, you'll be going, I'm scrolling past. I mean, you know, we have Portugal, Romania, Russia. I mean, all these different people, and not all of them are as interesting. I think that's probably about it before we're going to go ahead and, I mean, like I said, this will be on the website if you want to go look into it in depth. Oh, we got one more. In Norway, they call it the grizzlehale, which means pigtail or curly alpha. Grizzlehale doesn't mean curly alpha. Kroll alpha means curly alpha, but it's either pig's tail or curly alpha is what they call. It's, monkey's tail got me. So the next symbol on our list is the ampersand, which I will say is such a long word for such a small symbol. You know, when someone first told me what that was, I never even thought it had a name. I just thought that was the and sign growing up, just the and sign. And until I was probably in my teens, until someone came to me and dropped some knowledge on me and said, no, that's the ampersand, son. That's, it's not just the and sign. And you realize, and I thought they were probably, full of it, but truthfully, there is a lot to this. The ampersand is what's called a logogram. It is a character that represents a word or phrase. And it actually, believe it or not, dates back to like the 1st century. It's crazy, just like the @ sign, it's this stuff. So you think this stuff was created with the internet age or whatever. It's like this stuff has been around forever. It's like what they say, the word meme or something like that. I mean, it's not as old as this stuff, but like the word meme was created like 70 years ago or something like that. I'm not sure. Don't at me. Yeah, right. We're talking about ads, but so yeah, it was first actually seen on some graffiti in Pompeii. But the first time that it was actually like done or whatever, they're not really sure as far as how far it was done before the actual eruption. But you can find, I guess they found the first ampersand. I was gonna say and somewhere right there. They found it in Pompeii. But starting in the Middle Ages, it also single letters also function as words, which they kind of still do now, but I guess more than like I and A. And so they were referred to as letters with the aid of the phrase per se to clarify that they were being referred to like the letter and not the actual word. And so the I, let's say we're taking the word I, for example, you would say I per se, which means I by itself, I the word, not I like E-Y-E, I guess. Or I'm not sure if they're talking about homonyms, but I guess they used letters that also sounded like words. And so ampersand, this is about to break this down for y'all. It's pretty wild. Ampersand is a ligature, right, for the word et, which is Latin and French for and. And ampersand is a sign for the word and, right? And this goes back to the Middle Ages, but you have to understand how the Middle Ages worked to understand why the symbol ends up being called what it is. And so the ampersand is a sign for the word and it's written or typed as, the ampersand sign. It's a modification of the term and per se and. So it's basically going back to when they were using the terms per se after these certain words. And I'm not really sure why that connects with and the fact that the letters that sounded like words, but that is where the kind of per se idea comes from. And so ampersand actually is 4 different words mashed together. It's and per se and ampersand, which is just not, it doesn't, you realize humans ain't that smart. We ain't like, that's not, it sounds, some dudes are like, oh, that must just sound cool. Now we just, it's a word. It's like, it actually was just like 4 words like 800 years ago, but whatever. And what's crazy, I learned this while also doing the research, is the ampersand, once it went from the and per se and it kind of, ventured into the lexicon, it would be a part of our alphabet for like the next 600 years. And if you look back in like old alphabet books from like 200 or 300 years ago, it's in there. It was part of the alphabet. Like it was there before we got the letter W. Like, you never think about that. The alphabet's not always what it is or what it has been. You know what I mean? It would go like, so basically the alphabet was like 27 letters long, and it would go something like, W, K, Y, Z, and per se.
With Miller Mott College's online programs, you can choose when you study. Our online programs give you the flexibility to make education work with your schedule. Earn your degree without derailing your life. Visit us online at miller-mott.edu. That's miller-mott.edu.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I guess we didn't have Y yet either, I guess, when this was happening in the early 1800s. It's crazy. We should definitely do an episode on the alphabet. Only now am I even thinking about that because of doing this. But that's just, you would have never thought. I didn't know that ampersand was actually a part of the alphabet for at least, I think only 100 or 200 years in the English language, but it was for a little bit. And that's all I really have on that one. The at sign was kind of long, but the ampersand, we get right to it, and per se, and we will be moving on to the dollar sign. Okay, and so the dollar sign, I thought is interesting because I never really never thought about the fact of just where it comes from. I know where the term dollar comes from, but I never thought about where and we're gonna talk about it all, but where I guess what I'm talking about right now is where like the American dollar, where we got the idea to call our money dollars, and we get it from the Spanish dollar. We basically based our entire financial system off of the Spanish financial system. I didn't know that either until I did this research, and that's why we end up calling them dollars. It's crazy how Europe just kind of just infiltrates all different parts of society, because you think about like the fact that the term dollar comes from was it a part in Germany called Thaler, where they were mining silver for the silver dollars that they were using, and that's why they're called dollars. But that's also just a small country in Europe, but that's where that entire thing comes from. And America's entire financial system comes from another small, or not, compared to America, small country in Europe. Spain's pretty big, but not compared to America. That's a tangent, just to get back to the fact that we got the American dollar from the Spanish dollar, but we're going to talk about the actual dollar symbol as well. So the symbol appears in business correspondence in the 1770s, in Spanish America, as well as the early parts of U.S. and then the British American colonies, and they refer to this as the Spanish American peso, also known as the Spanish dollar or piece of 8 in British America. And you realize why we need the term like dollar when they were just rolling around calling stuff piece of 8. That's not a name, bro. That's a phrase. That's almost a sentence. You know what I mean? Like let's bring it down a little bit. But these coins, they provided the model for the currency that, like I said, the United States would adopt in 1792. And the Coinage Act of 1792, which is when they got it, is what created the U.S. dollar. And like I said, they defined it to have the value of a Spanish milled dollar, as the same is now current. But even when they did this, actually, there were a number of foreign coins that were still legal tender in the early, America. But this stopped actually with the new Coinage Act in 1857. And so now the idea is, where do we get the dollar symbol to go along with the word and actual object that is the dollar? The $1 United States note was issued by the United States in 1869, and it included, this is just one of the theories. There's a lot of, because no one chose to write it down back then, of just like, this is, I think all things do evolve, so you look at it, I mean, even with this podcast, it's definitely evolved over the last almost year and a half that we've been doing it, but you see that it was one thing and then it now becomes another thing. And so when they made that first dollar in 1869, it consisted of a U with the right bar overlapping an S, like a single bar dollar sign, as well as a very small double stroke dollar sign in the legal warning against forgery. And so that's kind of where we start to get the iconic crossover of the S and then the bars that go through the S that make the dollar sign. Now that's, like I said, that's one of the theories, because got me, like when you're reading and the article starts to go in a way that you're just like, I didn't even see that coming. I never really thought about where the Spanish got the idea from it, because really we get that from them. America didn't make the dollar sign. It kind of, unless you believe that theory, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sold on it, because there's different things that say the dollar sign may have been around for, I don't know, maybe even a couple hundred years before the Spanish actually even created it. But one of the ideas is that the U and the S came together, and over time the little curved bottom of the U kind of dropped out, and we get the dollar sign, which is a cool Americentric story to tell. There's another theory. It says it kind of comes from the Spanish American scribal abbreviation for peso, which is a P and then a kind of superscript S that's kind of up to the right of it. And I guess there was a study done of the late 18th and 19th century manuscripts that shows that gradually that S kind of came down a little bit, right? Kind of came down and got written over that P, which then was said to develop into that dollar sign mark. So that is something that is completely, devoid of any American contributions whatsoever. That's why I say, who really knows, right, where the dollar sign came from? We're just trying to get to the bottom of it. We were 2 for 3, I think. We got the @ sign, kind of figure where that kind of came from, how we got that, how did that happen, and then we also have the what do we just do? The ampersand. Told you where that came from, but the dollar sign is a bit of a mystery. And there's, like I said, there's one more theory. No one really knows. That's what I've found by this. That's why when you keep reading, there's like, well, it could have been this, it could have been that, it might have been this. So the last theory that I'll share for you as to where the dollar sign came from is that it comes from the idea of the word dollar being written on these Spanish pieces of 8. And so they're thinking that basically those pieces of 8 came from the Dutch, and they were called Joachimsthalers or Thalers, you know what I mean? And so they get it was some sort of an abbreviation that was used kind of with the S, the I, and the J. and they put those together, and they think the Germans might have made it. So really, like I said, we have decided that we don't know where the dollar sign came from. And if you do, put it in the comments. Before we move on to our next symbol, just run off a couple places, because I didn't realize that many places used a form of the dollar sign or dollars. I know there's a lot of different, like I know about pesos, I know about francs, I know about rubles and stuff like that, but I didn't really know that there's other countries that use the dollar sign. Brazil uses the dollar sign. Nicaragua uses the dollar sign. It kind of makes sense when you think about it because of, well, not the Brazilian part, but I mean that some of these were settled by the Spanish, who also had the Spanish dollar. We're not the first people to be, have been influenced by the Spanish. Malaysia uses the dollar sign. Samoa and Ethiopia. Oh, up until 1976. I don't know what they use now, but back then they were dollar bill, y'all. Next on the list, this next symbol goes by a number of different names depending on what time you're from, what age you are. The hashtag, the pound sign, any of those will do. It is believed that this symbol traces its origins to the Libro Pondo, basically, which was a term for Roman term for pound weight. So it kind of relates all the way back to then. The abbreviation was printed with a dedicated ligature type element with a horizontal line across, so that the lowercase I would not be mistaken for the numeral 1. And so that's kind of the first time we see it go. Basically, just it was one crossing, and then it would have been eventually become 2 horizontal strikes. Who knows who added that second strike? But like I alluded to earlier, what the question is it a pound sign? Is it a hashtag? Who knows? Or is it a number sign? I grew up, I feel like I called it a number sign for a long time. My parents, I believe, called it a pound sign, and then, of course, it just became the hashtag. I wonder if people still say pound sign. I don't know. So the symbol is described as the number sign, number character in a 1853 treatise on bookkeeping. That's one of the first times we ever see it kind of called the number sign. It's mentioned again in another bookkeeping text in 1880. And so, but actually a manual in 1917 really lays it out and helps you understand what's going on. Basically, the difference between it being a number sign and a pound sign is that the number sign, when it's a number sign when it's written before the figure, and then it is a pound sign if it's written after the figure. So that's really the difference. It's the same thing, just in different places, essentially being used for different meanings. And so now we're going to get to how it ended up being on people's phone dials. So in the mid-1960s, Bell Laboratories sent researchers to scour the country, trying to discover which symbol the public would most likely accept to be used in their new touch-tone telephone technology. And the researchers came back with the asterisk and the pound sign, as it was known then. Both of these were already on the typewriter, so it really was, they were trying. It's really interesting that they would take the time to go out and there was a person, I'd watch that movie, the guy who has to just drive around like the deep south and just ask people, like, which do you prefer on your phone? He's like, by God, buddy, I think I like that asterisk, and he just kind of has to write it down and report it back to the masses. But that's how we end up getting the pound sign on the phone. That's why it is still there now, is because 63 years ago, give or take, some people went out and asked the country what they liked best, and that's what we got. And one way I can remember using it with phones, and it's mentioned here in the text as well, is and you don't really see it that much anymore. I still do it myself a little bit. Is that you would be on the phone with something or with some company or some computer or whatever. You'd have to enter a set of numbers, and then to go ahead and finalize and make sure that you had ended whatever your communication with those numbers. You end it with the pound sign, and it would tell you that. Enter whatever amount of numbers followed by the pound sign. It was very, back in the day, I guess, sort of thing. I don't know if I haven't had to do it in a long time, but every now and then out of kind of, I just wrote response. I'll hit the pound sign, and it's actually the reason that was for that is because it acted as a separator between the number and letter strings, kind of help people understand, or help the computer, I guess, understand what was going on. In the UK, they call it, I guess, the hash mark, or the hash symbol, or just the hash. Because they already have the pound, that's their actual, that's their money, and that's how they actually think that we got the pound sign over here a little bit, depending on how you look at it, they say it's because I guess the early typewriters in the UK had the pound sign on the number 3 on their keyboards, and that's how we end up with it. And that's maybe kind of how we transferred the name. I'm not sure. And so it would be used throughout tech, throughout the 70s and 80s. It had different meanings. I believe when it was placed next to a symbol or number, it was, when it was used to denote immediate address mode in the assembly language of the PDP-11 when placed next to a symbol or number. So that's something, I guess. But we'll get from that to the actual hashtag that we know and love these modern times that we live in. So the hashtag was first brought to Twitter on August 23rd, 2007. Chris Messina, I believe was his name, Messina, and his Silicon Valley friends were using Twitter, but found the endless, unorganized scroll of tweets. They made it impossible to actually isolate groups of messages around a certain topic. You couldn't find anything. You just send a tweet out into the ether and have no way to pull it back or really kind of organize it in any sort of way. And so Messina thought that if people use the same word or phrase and put the hash symbol in front of it, that could kind of create an instant channel that anybody can join and participate in the conversation. That's essentially that's kind of how hashtags were presented to me around that time when I was about 2008, when I was about 18 or 19 years old. They were like, yeah, if you use this, everybody can talk about it. Everybody can go to this one place and talk about it. And so the first tweet with a hashtag ever was on August 23rd, 2007, and it is, and I quote, "How do you feel about using the hash, parentheses pound, for groups, as in hashtag barcamp, question mark." That was the first tweet. That was the first tweet to ever have a hashtag ever in the history of Twitter. The first time it was ever actually published in a blog post was 3 days later in a blog post entitled "Hashtags Equal Twitter Groupings" by a man named Stowe Boyd. I guess that's how you pronounce his name. Stowe, Stowe. Imagine being that guy. Imagine being the guy who wrote the first article about the hashtag, and I'm reading your name right now, and you just wrote a blog 15 years ago. Is it 15 years? It's been 15 years. And I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting. So now that will bring us to our next and final sign, which is kind of a twofer because it's going to be we're going to do both the actual symbol, like the peace sign, and then like the actual the hand symbol peace sign. So we're going to start with the actual drawn symbol, which I did not know has a interesting enough. We'll find neither one of these symbols. Well, it's hard to put. The original peace sign itself was not, like the hand symbol was not really made for peace, and we'll get to that. But the actual drawn symbol was made for peace, but nuclear peace, and it's actually kind of interesting. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's kind of like the circular symbol that looks kind of like a Mercedes symbol, but it's not. It has like I think one more line or one less line, depending on, I don't know that much about the Mercedes symbol. But the interesting thing about the peace sign, if you know what I'm talking about here, is that it was designed to represent kind of like the semaphore signals that people that like plane operators use to like land planes and stuff like that. And so like the idea is that if you look and if you understand that signal alphabet, the letter D is in there, and the downward lines are also that they represent the letter N, and so the N and the D together come together to mean nuclear disarmament. That's what the peace sign actually means. That's what it was actually created for, was to show the resistance against nuclear weapons. And so that's what's really kind of written and hidden in there, is the idea for nuclear disarmament. It was created by a man named Holtum. I'm not sure if I got his first name. I want to say it's Eric. I don't think it's Eric though. But I thought I saw somewhere his name was Eric. But he was to describe the symbol as representing despair, with the central lines forming a human with its hands questioning at its sides against the backdrop of a white earth. That's getting pretty deep on a couple lines and circles. There's another meaning, evidently, according to the creator. Holtum has also said, and I quote, "I drew myself, the representative of an individual in despair, with hands, palm outstretched towards and downwards in the manner of Goya's peasant before the firing squad. I formalized the drawing into a line and put a circle around it." So there's a lot going on here. But that's really all this happens in the UK. This doesn't happen in America. And so the symbol was first displayed during a protest march that took place on Easter weekend of 1958, Good Friday of 1958. Thousands of British people gathered in London's Trafalgar Square to protest nuclear weapons. 500 cardboard lollipops on sticks were produced, and half were black on white and the other half were white on green. And just as the church's liturgical colors change over Easter, so the colors were to change from winter to spring, from death to life. Black and white would be displayed on Good Friday, and Saturday green and white would be on Easter Sunday and Monday. And so basically, but they were flashing these peace signs during this protest. I believe this all was to start because I guess the UK had started to do nuclear tests, and when they were becoming, I believe, the third country to kind of become nuclearly active. Is that the right way to say active in a nuclear way? I'm not sure. They were the third country to start making nuclear bombs, and the people in Britain were like not liking this. This is not cool. We don't agree. And this was their way of fighting back, was to protest, and they did so for a number of days. But the main part of their protest that has lasted through all these years has been that peace sign that is now ubiquitous. It is everywhere. But if you ever wondered how it happened, that is how it happened. So the protesters actually marched 52 miles from London to a place called Aldermaston in Berkshire, which is where the atomic weapons research establishment was actually happening, so they could protest the war. Now we'll get to the piece, the hand sign. The hand sign, there's a lot of things I've heard about the hand sign. I'm not sure what's true and what's not true. What I will tell you is what I think, and we'll probably get deeper into it on the mini episode next week if I can do a little more research. But there's been different things. They say initially, the peace sign itself, which we're talking about when we say the peace sign, it's kind of the Western peace sign of two fingers making a V for victory, which we'll see. It does happen, like it was used in World War II as V for victory, but before that, really, truthfully, what I'm about to tell you is, if you believe it or not, how we get the F word. How we get, the word that rhymes with duck and truck, but starts with F. It's really interesting. Now, the jury is still out a little bit as to whether this story is true, but I've read a number of articles that seem to kind of think that it is. And so it basically kind of starts in what was called, I believe, the Anglican Wars, I want to say in the 1400s, 1450, give or take. This is between Britain and France. And the British archers were evidently so good with their archery skills that if they were ever captured by the French would cut off their two fingers. So they couldn't, use them in archery, so they couldn't, quote unquote, pluck anybody. And what would happen is, so since the British knew that this was occurring, whenever they would see the French soldiers and they hadn't been, and then those British soldiers hadn't been captured, meaning they still had their two fingers, they would kind of taunt them with those fingers, put their two fingers up to be like, hey, you haven't gotten me, I can still pluck you. So pluck you, P-L-U-C-K, became kind of a derogatory term to use against somebody. And what they say is basically, if you look at like the whole just linguistic part of it, how it progressed over the next 500 years, the pla sound turns into a fa sound because I guess it's easier to say than pla, and that's how we get that four-letter word that rhymes with duck, truck, and muck. I mean, I believe it. I don't know if you guys are going to believe it. I don't think we've ever done a How Did That Happen on curse words. I've been wanting to, but this seems reasonable enough for me. And it also, what really makes it seem like it makes sense to me is if you understand in Europe, the American version of flipping the bird to somebody, the middle finger, is using the two, like the peace sign. It's basically the peace sign over there is the middle finger in America. So it would make sense that where the term pluck you started in all this history, it would still be a bad thing. Makes a lot of sense to me. I hope you guys can hop on that train, that bandwagon with me. I don't know. If not, tell me what you think. Tell me why it's not that. Or give me your own story. Maybe you created it. Maybe you made it up. I'm not sure. But that seems to be, it makes sense to me. And so there's definitely the part where you talk about it was the V for victory in World War II, and like that happened, and Winston Churchill did it, and there's a bunch of pictures of him flashing it, which I thought was really weird when you consider he's almost flipping the bird while he's being like, victory, peace, pluck you. But yeah, I thought, but to me that was the most. That's where I think it comes from. That's where I think it comes from, and the same thing happens as we see with a peace sign, the actual drawn symbol when it comes to America. It kind of just gets taken up by the 60s and 70s and becomes a symbol for peace that it still kind of is now. But it never was ever intended to be a peaceful sign, and neither. Well, I guess that was the only one that actually wasn't, I guess. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode of How Did That Happen? Tried a couple different things this week, a couple different changes. That's what I like about this podcast. This is the place for me to come and just, if I don't like it, me pull a part out there, put a new part in there, just see what happens. Who knows? These other segments might be back. Things I don't know before may be back sooner than you know. I like it. It's just I wasn't always finding. It's something that only made sense, I think, for the first few episodes. I'm not sure why. I don't know. But it's not. I wasn't able to always find something that. Not that I didn't know. That's not really what I'm saying. But that I couldn't find a way to fit into the episode. You know what I mean? Once I learn it, I just put it into the episode, and it's no longer needed a whole other segment to kind of go back to. But yeah, hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys liked the story of Old Blue Dog. Let me know in the comments if this man brought somebody back to life or if he just kidnapped somebody's wife, y'all. Let's figure this out. But as always, if you like what you heard here, give us a like and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. It definitely helps the pod grow. We are trying to get to top 100 history podcasts on Apple Podcasts. That is a goal. That was a goal last year. It was a goal this year, and will be the goal next year. Give us 5 stars if you really loved it. Give us 2 stars if you didn't really love it. Tell us why you didn't really love it, because constructive criticism is always welcome. Like I said, so things are going to be a little bit different here. There will be no bite-sized bio coming out on Thursday. The next bite-sized bio will come out next Monday, a full week from today. If you're listening to it on the day it came out, which is a Monday. Still comes out at the same time, Monday at 4:30 a.m. It's going to be my time slot right now until I see fit to change it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please keep coming back from week to week. Thank you guys for pressing play, and I'll see you next week with the next bite-sized bio.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.